it's very powerful, I think, because usually, you know, and you know, this question of who am I has always been with me for many years, because you know, I did so many things, I achieved so many goals that I wanted to have, and I thought from the outside it looks like success, but then I felt like it didn't make me happy, right? So circumstances, jobs, I don't know, family, houses or cars or whatever didn't make me really happy, so I was always searching for something outside until I started to look at, you know, at myself. Why is it that maybe things that may make me happy for a while, but then it doesn't last, you know? And I was always looking for the next thing. It doesn't matter what it was, but I was always looking for the next thing. And then I realized there was not a constant happiness or something constant, but I was convinced inside that there has to be something that's constant, like, I don't know, a joy or some kind of peace that's not of this world in a way. And when I heard the sentence, be what you cannot not be, for me that summarizes, like in one strong sentence, exactly what this is all about. You know, we try to be so many other things, so we try to, because also we're put into roles, you know, we at some point we're like a child, then we are a student, and then we identify so much, let's say, with the role of a student, that our self-worth or whatever we think we are is so affected by some grades that we receive just because somebody asked us to learn something, to write it down within 1 hour, and then we have to, like, you know, bring it out of us. And if we don't bring it out of us the same way that someone else expects us, then we think we are either great or we are a failure. And then for me it sort of means that there's something wrong with it. It cannot be like this. So we play this role, and then we identify so much with the role that, as you know, if we, I don't know, as I said, have bad grades, or if we lose our husband or wife, or girlfriend and boyfriend, or if we get a job, we're super happy, and if we lose a job, then people kill themselves. So there must be something different. You know, these are all roles. So the roles that we play, they come and go, but there's something else that never comes and goes, and that's sort of always there. And that, for me, it's a pointer, the sentence, be what you cannot not be, is exactly a pointer towards that, I think, that we always are. Like, we can't, you know, we don't have control over it, it doesn't come and go, it doesn't become better or worse. It's just something that we always are. And, you know, in an example or in an analogy, it's like, for me, it's like let's say there's a screen, and there's movies being played on a screen, right? So usually we pay a lot of attention to the movie itself, and that's sort of the roles, the stuff that's happening in the world. And the movie can only, like, you know, the movie can only happen on the screen. So without the screen, the movie wouldn't be there. Let's say a TV, right? But nobody pays attention to the TV, but it's always there. But the movies always change and always something else. And, you know, we get very emotional with all the movie stuff, but nobody pays attention, or after the movie nobody claps for the screen, you know, but without the screen nobody would have been there, nothing would have happened. But that's exactly what I think is happening here as well, that, you know, through a wrong identification of all those roles of what we're doing, we become so obsessed with stuff, you know, we get obsessed over, I don't know, our girlfriend or my girlfriend or my boyfriend, whoever, they would, you know, they go out tonight and then I'm not there, so I cannot control it. So she may go and sleep with someone else or make out or whatever, you know. So we're so obsessed with things here because we sort of think we are in control of many other things, that we just get easily obsessed about anything. It can be anything, you know. People have fear of heights, of spiders, of tigers, of you name it. Like, you know, there's fears that we probably have never heard of. So we can get obsessed with so many things, but, you know, and we take it for granted because we always compare ourselves to others. We think, oh, he's afraid, I'm less afraid, so I'm okay, you know. So we think about ourselves that we are okay. And so overall, I think, as I said, it's a misidentification with something that we are not. So that's what I think. There's also an example of, you know, I usually call it, or there's a sentence like, whatever perceives cannot be perceived, meaning I always say it like with form and the formless. Like this sort of what we see here, including this body, it's the form, right? We can see it, we can perceive it, we can sense it. But what the thing that is perceiving is not of this place. And it sounds a bit spooky if you try to understand it or with a normal mind, but at the end of the day, I think that's what's happening. Because it's like the same thing with, like in order to perceive all of this, we have to be of a different attribute. Meaning, for instance, I give this example of the tongue. If your tongue was made of salt and I gave you salt, you wouldn't taste it because it's made of the same. And this whole thing of who we really are, it's, I think it's so obvious. At the same time, it's sort of a hidden secret, because it's like the water for the fish. If you look at, like if you ask the fish, hey, how is the water today? The fish would be like, what is water? They don't perceive water because they're always in it. They would see it if they missed it for a while. But that's, for me, I think it's the same with us. So we're always so concerned about what's happening here in this world of the form that we forget, seemingly, that what we really are. Because the best example is, for instance, if you just relax and just let go of everything. You don't want to control anything, you don't want to do anything, nothing. Usually, how do you feel when you do that? You feel usually very relaxed, because that's sort of our natural state of being. And we always think, we need to put a lot of effort into things and do things, and sometimes that's true, on a relative level. But if it comes to the question of who we are and how you can, let's say, find peace in your life and joy, it's that. We usually, I think, have the notion that we think that we can become happy, or that we can be more joyful when we achieve certain things. So like when I get this degree, when I get this job, when I get this girlfriend or boyfriend, when I get this house, when I finally move to that city, when I finally go to this new country, then we usually think, okay, now this happiness is gonna come finally, So we always sort of live, we always live in the future. So we give more importance to the future than to the now, to what's actually happening. And this is now is the only place that exists, in a way. So even the past only exists now, like through memories. So the future only exists also now. It's projections to the future. So since that's the funny thing, since the movement, so we identify a lot with thoughts, emotions, and stuff that's actually not happening here. So for instance, when somebody has a bad Saturday morning, it's usually not because of the Saturday morning, it's usually because of next Wednesday, next Thursday. We're so concerned, we think, oh, something really bad is going to happen. I'm going to not do well at my job, I'm not going to do like this, he's going to call me, but this is not happening, this is just making up stuff in our head. And that's the funny thing, that we have identified so much with thoughts. If you just think about thoughts and also emotions, that's linked in a way. But if you think about thoughts, the nature of thoughts is to be in the past and be in the future. And it always changes back and forth. That's the nature of thought, right? A thought can never be right here, now. Like as soon as you think about the now, it's already the future. So what happens is, since the nature of thoughts is to always move back and forth, and we usually identify so strongly with thoughts, that means our state of being is also to be seemingly in the past and in the future, in the past and the future. And then how does it make us feel? Like if you're always in the past and the future and we hold on to it, then it makes us feel, nervous, and we always we walk around, we don't have peace. And that's what I mean, this is, when you think about who we really are, another analogy would be, you have the blue sky and you have clouds. So the clouds in the sky is moving, it's coming, there's a thunderstorm, there's clear sky, but there's clouds coming. So these are the thoughts and emotions and things that is happening. But what we are in this example is the blue sky. And the blue sky has never been touched by the biggest thunderstorm, by rain, by airplanes, by whatever, So this is something that's untouchable in a way, and that's what we are. But you know what happens is that people come to us and they tell us, hey, I can show you how to get really into the moment, you know, and we start thinking, wow, this is exactly what I need, because I heard when you get into the moment, then you become more calm, and you know, you buy into it. It's like advertising, right? And then you start reading books, you know, how to get into the moment, and you used to read and read and read, and then you see some improvements, and you're like, but still I probably did something wrong. So you read the next book, you know, how to get really into the moment, and you read that book, and you feel like it still doesn't work. So the point is, you know, and it's an endless journey to happiness, and we never reach it. And then people start saying, oh, it's not about the goal, but it's about the journey and stuff like this. But if you really look at it, you know, if you really look at it and see the trick that the mind plays, is basically, it's not possible not to be in the moment. That's exactly also part of the title, be what you cannot not be. So if someone comes to you and says, hey, I have the secret how to get really happy, or how to get into the moment, or to be really peaceful, then maybe, you know, you are sort of immune if you understand that it's not possible not to be in the moment. And that's, I think, something crucial, because we're like always confronted with people, you know, like telling us, if we use this product, if we go to this city, if we go on that trip, then finally everything will be good. That's sort of what we think. But if you really, you know, it's funny when you really look at what causes, because it really looks like, let's say if we go to a new place, it really looks like we're more happy. Or if we get a new girlfriend or boyfriend, it looks like we're more happy. Or if we get a new house, it seems like we get more happy. But if you really look what's happening in that moment, it's not the object that causes that feeling of happiness, but it's that moment of letting go. Because let's say you have searched, let's say you're not in a relationship, and then after, I don't know, 2 years you're back in a relationship, and then it's not that person that you're now with that makes you happy, but it's that moment of, oh, finally I have a boyfriend or a girlfriend again. And then it's that letting go that causes that happiness, and not the object. Because, you know, we have all seen it. We have had toys as a kid, and then, you know, usually the kids, they have the toy, then they get bored after 2 weeks, but then if somebody else wants to play with the toy, then we say, oh, no, it's mine, you know, I want to have it. Then it gets interesting again, you know, so it's not the object that's so exciting, but it's more our desire and the letting go of the desire. And, you know, if we understand that, that means ultimately we don't have to look for happiness, because that tells you if it's a letting go of something, that means it lets go to where we are right now. And that means, to me, that means that what we are has to be happiness, joy. So imagine your life when you think you're like emptiness or whatever, you're like someone who has to fight in his life to get things. So imagine that situation, how this life would be of this person. Or imagine a person understanding or seeing that what I am is happiness, is joy, is peace, you know? Like imagine, just take those two scenarios as an option, and just look at the, you know, the product of the two people, how they live their lives. One person will always search for happiness in everything, and they will never find it. And this other person will be just relaxed, will be happy, whatever they have. They may have a great house, they may not have a great house, or whatever. But this is, you know, this is the funny thing, that this is always given, you know, but it's sort of overshadowed by all our thoughts and this happening, but only seemingly. And that's, I think, the important point. Because if I told you now, you know, this is the paradise, but you are not in the paradise, but I can show you the way to paradise, that's bullshit, you know. Because what I'm saying is, you are already, like, you are it, you know, that's it. Like you are not just something that you know, I don't know, something that needs to be loved, or that shines on others, or do you give, I don't know, something to others, but you are that very source of it, of that. You are like, you are the sun, you know, you're not something else. You're the source of everything. And that's the funny thing, that we, you know, and as I said, this is just a misidentification, and our lives seemingly feels like we're always seeking, constantly from one thing to the other. And we take so much shit, you know, we accept so many different things that, yeah, it starts, I don't know, many things, you know, I even just work, like, you know, if you really look from a macro perspective on humanity, that we work, I don't know, from Monday to Friday, from 9 to 5, or some people even much more. If you just look at a macro perspective, forget everything else you know, you would come from a different planet. You would be like, what are those guys doing? And not just that they go to work, but they usually don't even like doing what they do. The people that they meet, they usually also don't like, because everyone is sort of pissed off in a way. And that's because, we take so much, we have such a high level of tolerance that, that we forgot sort of what this is all about. So it's almost like that we have become enslaved to something, not to the system, not to something outside, but this is like we have given that power over to something, in a way, seemingly. That's important. It never actually happens, but seemingly, that's how it feels, the world, And so I think also one very important point here is what I said, thoughts in general. Like, thoughts are so close to us. And when you just observe thoughts, like usually thoughts, like if you look at our lives, they seem to have so much power over us, because what happens is we listen to thoughts like as if there was a preacher, and we think we are the preacher, and we think we are also being the preached, meaning, there's, we have around, 60,000, 70,000 thoughts a day, right? They come and go. And we are so obsessed with thoughts that we listen to them, it's possible that nothing happens, let's say on a Sunday afternoon, nothing happens, but thoughts come and they make us crazy. That happens, right? It can happen. So, like, you see the power that thoughts may have over us, and that's not like something that it's a given, but we produce that. So, and many people, they would go and meditate, they would try to do yoga, and they would just try everything to calm the mind. People take drugs, or they do all kind of crazy stuff, right? Like they sort of try to escape because it's too much. You can't take it. If you all identify with this, you can't take it. So people try to calm down the mind, they try to escape of whatever is happening. But the point is, you don't have to escape, because, as I said, the only thing is, it's enough to just notice that, let's say, thoughts on a thought level, just to notice that thoughts are not about us and they're not from us. Like, it sounds like, it may sound crazy when you hear it for the first time, but it's when you see it, when you really see it, then, like, it's, the sentence, when you see it, you're not looking from it. But when we don't see something, we're looking from it. So, for instance, when we don't see that thoughts just come and go, that means we're looking from thoughts, and the perspective from thought is extremely limited, But when thoughts are happening and we see it from outside, we see how thoughts come and go. And then, when we see that, we think it's the craziest thing to think that thoughts are from us or about us. And the effect it has is huge. When, as I said, like, imagine there's a radio, like you're driving your car, let's say you're driving Highway 1 in California from San Francisco to Los Angeles, you see all the amazing world, and then, let's say you turn on the radio, you have some good music, but then let's say you turn on the radio and there's somebody talking, and they're talking about you on the radio, So for your attention from, let's say, enjoying the ride would be like, oh my God, they're talking about me, hopefully they're not saying any bullshit about me, So basically, what's happening is, just because they talk about you, you would put all your focus on it and be super afraid of stuff. So, and that's the same with, imagine that, like, thoughts is sort of a radio system, and they come and go, and we constantly think that's about us, and that's why we put so much energy into thoughts that it just exhausts us. Every morning we wake up sort of fresh, and then the day becomes quite heavy and heavy and heavy, and then at night we're exhausted from the thoughts, on a usual day. So the point is, if we see, like, and that's important, not just to hear it and say, that's how it is, but just to entertain the possibility that this may be possible, and just see and observe, just sit down, observe thoughts, if they come and go, or if you are the producer of thoughts. That makes a huge difference. So if you think you're the producer of thoughts, that means you have first, and then thoughts come and go. But then, isn't it the case, like when you really observe thoughts, that they come and go whether or not you are there or pay attention to it? For me, like that's obvious, right? Like they come and go. And what happens usually is, it seems as if we are the thinker of the thoughts, but that just seemingly happens because what happens is a thought comes and then we claim that we are the thinker. We are the thinker of the thoughts. We cannot accept that things just happen. Like, if you just look at our bodies, which is also very close to us, right? So if you look at the bodies, we don't claim that we control everything in the body, right? Imagine we would control everything in the body. I think each one of us would just die after a few minutes. Why? Because, we would need to beat our heart, we would need to split blood cells, we would need to digest, we would need to do, it's so complex, right? So we don't have the arrogancy to think that we're controlling everything in the body, but seemingly we have the arrogance, to claim or say that we control thoughts. It's a funny thing, but as I said, you don't have to believe anything I say, but maybe I just invite you to entertain a possibility that it may be like this, because for me, when I see that, it makes a difference of night and day, because what happens is you're no longer controlled by thoughts or by something, and that's a huge relief, because otherwise you're just enslaved to some thought system. And that's exactly this sentence what I said earlier: be what you cannot not be. Because what we usually do is, and that's a funny thing as well, that we identify with something, without even thinking about it. And then what happens is we try to escape, let's say, this body or the thinking, and want to become, let's say, become peaceful. And that's the funny thing. How could we become peaceful if we are already peace? It's impossible. So what we're trying to do is, we are peace. We identify with something else, with thoughts or with emotions or with this body. And then we try to become peace as this body, as the thoughts, which it's not possible. That's the funny thing, it's not possible. But we don't have to do this journey because we are already where we want. Like, we are already what we're looking for. That's like the same sentence in a different way. So what does it mean? We are already what we're looking for. It doesn't mean you are already what you're looking for if you read 10 books, if you go on 10 retreats, and if you always try to think it, and I know that's a given. That's the funny thing, that this is a given, but it's so hard, it's impossible to accept for us that we are already what we're looking for, because then we make up shit like, no, but I don't feel that way, so it has to be like this. It's like the example I give sometimes, about these mushrooms that there are in nature. So there's a certain mushroom in nature. It's basically the only way to reproduce for this mushroom is that it spits out spores, and the other mushrooms are, let's say, in a forest or somewhere else, and it spits out spores, and then it finds little ants walking around, and it hacks into the brain of the ant. It's really actually happening. It's not a horror story. Like, it hacks into the brain of the ant, and then the spore takes over the brain, right? So it basically tells the ant to go this way because that's where the next mushroom. It's like actual story from nature. And then what happens is, if you asked the ant in that moment, hey, where are you going? Why are you going into this forest? It would say, well, I like the forest, so I want to go there. So it would claim immediately some foreign installment, like a parasitical movement in a way. It would claim it to be myself, and then it would act from that perspective and say, I go there. And that's, I think, what's happening to us all the time. And that's why it's a funny thing. Like, the thought system as such, like, we always claim it's ours. But when you realize and see it's not ours, then you're no longer controlled by it. Like, if you really look, I really think, and it's really obvious to see, if you really look, that we are like also other directed by thoughts, by emotions, by other stuff. And we take it, that's the funny thing, we take it to be ourselves. So the thief is in the house in a way. That imagine it's like somebody breaks into your house and he would just tell you, hey, I'm you, and you would just believe it, and then the thief becomes sort of, the house owner, and they're the same, and that's what we do. We sort of invite the thief in, and the thief says, hey, I'm you, and then we buy this, and that's the funny thing. And that's why this sentence is so important, because what we usually try to do then is that we, let's say in this example of this ant and the spore, we usually claim the spore is so intelligent that it sort of is in disguise and it claims to be the ant, and the ant bites into it right away without even questioning it. And that way we actually defend it, and then we try to become an ant again as the spore in a way, and that doesn't work, obviously. And that's why it's so important, to question things, to question the status quo, and to basically question the very first thing, the starting point where we start, because it's almost like as if there's a cart, a horse cart, and then imagine like how we live our lives is usually that the horses are behind the cart, so the horses are trying to push the cart and it's not working, but and then we try to basically, we're failing, everyone else doing it, and then we try to basically push the cart, we try it from a different angle, we try different things, and it never works. So if we put finally the horses in front of the cart, then it works smoothly, and that's sort of what we do, because we just misidentify with everything, and then the product is basically the life that we have here, seemingly, and that's always important, I think, the seeming. So yeah, that's I think what's happening here, and if we, the funny thing is that it's very hard, it's one thing I think also to understand this on a, let's say, on a theoretical or on a thought level, let's say, but the other thing is to really, because that's at the end of the day what matters is to really, to sense it, to feel it, to have just a good day, just to have a good day, and so not it's enough to just live this one day by a day and not think about next week and next month and everything, or your reputation, what do other people think about myself, and all the stuff that's happening, or self-worth, we think just like when we have, I don't know, more money on the account, a better car, a better house, a better girlfriend, a better job, or whatever, then we think our self-worth go up. But if we make our self-worth or who we are dependent on other stuff that change, the nature of everything is to change, then we are like enslaved to some world that we don't want to be enslaved to. So basically, that's that's the key is not to, as I said earlier, what happens is, so usually we never question the starting point, meaning, let's say I assume I'm a separate entity, independent of everything else, and I go my way, and then somebody else says, hey, you can do some personal development, I show you how to become more peaceful, how to become rich, these are the 10 ways, if you read my book, you'll be there, if you come to my seminar, it's even better, because it costs more money, and so on and so on, and they put you sort of on a journey, which is a never-ending journey. Like, how many people have you heard that meditate for 30 years and nothing has happened really? When they say maybe it's better, but maybe not, and so there's a lot of crisis going on. And so we always take this very first assumption as real. There's this quote from Ramana Maharshi which says, presupposing the existence of a non-existing thing. So that's what he talks about. We presuppose the existence of a non-existing thing, meaning like what we usually take ourselves to be, a separate entity, separate from everything else. And then he says, trying to find salvation by improving, this non-existing thing, doesn't it actually do the opposite and reinforce this non-existing thing? And that's, I think, what's happening constantly. And that's, so basically we assume we're this, I'm Benjamin, I'm this person, and I have this journey, and I can become better, and people tell me how I am, whether I'm good or bad, or blah, blah, blah. And then I go on this journey, and I'm affected, because this is sort of like everything else seems as if it's real. And then we reinforce it. So instead of always trying to improve something and going a journey, it's enough to question that this, what we want to improve, or this that we think gets hurt, that maybe that's not who we really are. And that's not just some theory or some weird stuff, but this is something I think that's actually happening and that we actually can perceive and that we can experience every day. So yeah,